The movie begins with Tony impatiently tapping her foot as she waits for Payne to get ready. As his manager, she knows the crowd outside is eager for his match to start. Inside, Granny Rita massages Payne's shoulders while Tony pushes him to stay focused and give his best. The story then flashes back 8 years. A younger, hot-tempered Tony rips off her headset and smashes it in frustration. Later, she sits in a busy public space, texting Darius. The lively performance of street artists briefly soothes her before she heads to the bus stop. After stepping off the bus, Tony grabs a slice of pizza and enters an old building. Inside, the place is packed with boxing gear, a ring, a punching bag, and posters covering the walls. It's clear this is either a gym or her home. Loud blues music fills the air as she looks around. Meanwhile, Payne trains in the ring, throwing punches. Tony leans against the ropes, swaying slightly to the music. Suddenly, the music cuts off, Payne stops, and Tony turns to see a man approaching with a wooden stick. Elliot, the gym's owner. His sudden presence catches her off guard. Elliot doesn't like that Tony entered uninvited and asks for her bag, suspecting she might be up to something. Tony tosses her bag to him, and he checks it, only to find her shoes and personal belongings. Tony feels a little embarrassed for barging into his place without permission. She asks Elliot if she looks like a thief. He replies that no one looks like one, but that's the problem. Anyone could be. Tony then explains that she came to practice boxing. They introduce themselves to each other. Back in the present, Tony watches Payne's boxing match on a screen, looking tense. At the same time, she is also seen cleaning the gym. She had convinced Elliot to let her stay there. Elliot isn't just anyone. He is an excellent coach who has trained some of the best boxers, something Tony brings up in conversation. Elliot believes that precision and accuracy are the most important skills in boxing. When Tony mentions M's name, Elliot realizes they have met before, years ago in a park. This is true because Tony had been a fan of In the present, Tony texts Darius, worried about her daughter's safety as she is at the match. On the screen, Payne continues to fight fiercely. Tony brings up more top boxers, and Elliot mentions Ali, even mimicking him. He smiles and calls Ali a sick machine. Tony recognizes Elliot from an obscure boxing YouTube channel and wants him to train her. When she offers to pay, Elliot gets angry, saying it's not about money. For some reason, Elliot doesn't want Tony to become a boxer. She starts to think it's because she's German, but the real reason remains unclear. In the present, Tony steps out of the room and another flashback begins. Years ago, Payne waited for Tony after her assistant set up a meeting between them without telling her. At the time, Tony is pregnant and has no interest in meeting Payne, so she tries to leave. Payne, desperate to talk, gets frustrated. Tony ignores him and gets into her car. When Payne tries to follow, Tony's assistant steps in to stop him, but Payne punches the assistant, knocking him down. Tony starts driving away, but it turns out Payne has already slipped into the car. Eventually, she pulls over and tells him that he's impatient and lacks discipline. Payne, however, believes the real reason Tony refuses to sign him is because he's black, showing his deep insecurities. Without saying much more, Payne gets out of the car. Another flashback shows Tony visiting Coach Elliot's gym, trying to convince him to train her. Initially, Elliot resists, but later he admits that Tony has the right qualities to be a trained boxer. Excited, Tony tries to show off her skills, but when she goes to punch Elliot, she ends up falling instead. Elliot offers her a hand, encouraging her. For Tony, boxing is her way of proving that no one can mess with her. But for Elliot, boxing isn't just about winning, it's about earning respect and recognition. Even now, he wants Tony to leave and stay out of boxing, but Tony is determined. She wants to prove to her father that she's not just his daughter, she's a skilled fighter. Back in the present, Tony is extremely worried about her daughter, who has a fever. She repeatedly calls Darius, checking on her condition and giving instructions about medication and visiting a doctor. She also asks him to let her know when her daughter falls asleep. After that, Tony gets ready for her boxing practice. Elliot asks if she thinks he would hurt a woman. Tony responds with the same line he once told her, "Everybody is like that, but nobody looks like that." Elliot then checks Tony's shoes, and she happily tells him she wears a size 6.5 or 7. He hands her the locker keys, telling her to get a size 7 pair. When Tony opens the locker, she finds it packed with footwear. She grabs a size 7 pair, only to realize they're dance shoes. Concern. A flashback shows Coach Elliot explaining 3 key rules to Tony: attitude, habit, and gratitude. He then instructs her to wear the leather dance shoes, subtly implying she isn't taking boxing seriously. Since this is Elliot's gym, his rules apply, meaning Tony can't question him. Elliot holds up a magazine with a poster of Buddy Guy, the singer of the song Blue. He tells Tony to put on the boots and show her dance moves, making it clear he's doing everything he can to discourage her from pursuing boxing. Tony pushes back, asking him to show her real training techniques instead. Push-ups, footwork, anything. She insists she's not just some club dancer. Frustrated, Elliot tells her to leave and walks into his office. Tony, however, doesn't leave. She plays music and starts dancing. From his office, Elliot watches. Eventually, Tony collapses to the ground, exhausted. Elliot approaches her. After a brief conversation, Tony goes to take a shower and prepares to leave. But just as she's about to go, Elliot stops her, saying she hasn't finished cleaning. Ironically, after telling her to leave earlier, he's now keeping her there. This makes Tony happy. This is exactly what she wanted. It seems her dream of becoming a trained boxer is finally starting to come true. Elliot then asks about her past, and Tony reveals what haunts her. Years ago, she was in a soccer match. Her team was about to win when a blonde girl from the opposing team secretly hid the ball, cheating. Furious, Tony called her out, but the referee warned her instead. Moments later, the same girl tripped Tony, causing her to fall hard on her knees, bleeding badly. No one noticed the foul play. Instead, Tony was accused of pushing the girl and was ejected from the game. This is why Tony hates unfairness. Another flashback shows her walking with a limp due to an ankle injury, while people around her tease her. One girl in particular keeps mocking her, until Tony punches her in the nose, making it bleed. Back in the present, Payne continues fighting in the ring, with Tony watching the broadcast. After a moment, she turns it off. In the past, after hearing Tony's determination, Elliot finally agreed to train her. Tony eagerly puts on her shoes again, but Elliot tells her to take them off. She must train barefoot to feel the connection between her feet and the ground. Excited, Tony removes her shoes, but Elliot is surprised by the messy room. He expected her to be neat, but she's only good at cleaning up after others, not herself. The two sit down and talk. Tony reveals she earned her first dollar at 14 by selling a burger. Elliot, on the other hand, had a rough past. He was involved in drug hustling to support his family. Then, training begins. Tony starts with endless sit-stand exercises until her legs go numb. Eventually, she collapses from exhaustion. After a short break, Tony continues her sit-stand exercises. Coach Elliot tells her to always finish standing. They sit down and continue talking, while in the present, Payne's fight is being shown. In the past, Coach Elliot told Tony to enter the boxing ring and gave her a helmet for safety. Meanwhile, in the present, Payne is introduced as the champion. Back in the past, Elliot starts Tony's training by throwing balls at her from different directions, teaching her to dodge like she would in a real fight. At first, Tony successfully avoids them, but one ball eventually hits her forehead. Elliot immediately helps her, showing how much he cares about his students' safety. In the present, Tony calls Darius, telling him to calm their daughter, who won't stop screeching. In the past, Elliot asked about Darius, and Tony praised him. Elliot tells her she did well on her first day and should leave. His encouragement makes Tony feel appreciated, something Darius never does. Darius wants Tony to dress femininely, act proper, and attend parties, but she doesn't fit into that world. A flashback shows Tony at a party, feeling out of place and yawning loudly, embarrassing Darius. A flashback also shows the day Tony introduced Payne to the media. Later, Philip questions if she can trust Payne, but Tony dismisses his doubts. In the present, Tony reassures Darius that she'll spend time with their family tomorrow. After the call, she becomes emotional. Granny Rita enters, urging Tony to support Payne, saying if he loses, everyone will blame her. Rita even jokes that her granddaughter, a huge Tony fan, will personally question her about it. Tony refuses at first, but eventually reconsiders. In the past, Tony's intense training continued, weightlifting, push-ups, and punching. But when she struggles with pull-ups, Elliot gets frustrated and tells her to leave. Upset, Tony packs her things, then angrily throws a bowl of candies in the present. She later picks them up just like she cleans the gym in the past before leaving a note. Almost. Elliot finds Tony smoking on the rooftop and joins her. He shares his painful past. His mother was a drug addict who sent him to jail. Later, Elliot warns Tony to protect her hands since they're a boxer's most valuable asset. As Elliot trains Tony in the past, Payne uses the same techniques in his fight. Payne starts losing, and in the present, Tony rushes barefoot to the ring to support him. Just as she reaches, Darius calls to say their daughter is fine. The movie ends here.